Recording.
Start
Cool.
story time reloaded.
Start time reloaded. So today, talking to me. Okay. Today, we will be doing story time on the. This is the penultimate session of this book. So we're gonna do Into the Ground Lisp and C++ today, and then the money one revamped down, and then I think we can close it up, right?
Yep, that's the
Okay,
plan.
so we're gonna try to do some sort of scheming here, try to highlight the main moments of this process here. So this is divided. This is essentially a compilation of Gabriel's experience having a company, and he's gonna talk about the characters that were involved in that company, the journey from going from Lisp to C++, and we're gonna try to highlight the most interesting portions of it. So starting by the Lisp one. So let's see. Yeah, so here's just talking about implementing a dialect of Lisp for a supercomputer they were building over there in Stanford in 1981. Uh, what else? What else? Again, trying not to. Well, like I said, guys, Steely, is that how you say that?
Guy Steele.
Steel. He was mentioning here.
He's actually mentioned another time later because Gabriel actually wanted him in his company, but Steele was like, I don't want to be in California, and I'm not sure this is viable, so I'll pass.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So the name of the company would be Lucid, right? So yeah,
Lucid Incorporated.
Lucid Incorporated. A prospector, a man with a vision, finds a vein of gold in a desolate area. A company of men smart in the ways of building sluices, constructing extraction facilities, and mining books and deliveries uses the main vision to create wealth, a part of which is shared with the visionary. Yeah, Lucid Incorporated. Uh, okay, so then after that, again, a bunch of characters are being mentioned in here. Yeah, Lucid. Once you had to shut down the company, Warren personally made sure that each employee got a full month pay. We take care of you through success or failure. Uh, yeah, so this is actually pretty interesting. So I forgot to mention when the company was about 9 months away from folding, and then the current CEO read crossing the charm and learned one thing. When a company is trying to move beyond their early adopters to mainstream customers, sometimes the technical founder must go, so I went.
Crossing
Uh,
the chasm, actually.
yeah, crossing the chasm. Sorry, I read this wrong. Uh, yeah, this is actually pretty interesting because this essentially mean that when the company is trying what he called move beyond the early adopters to mainstream customers, essentially you're losing your identity. So the technical founder must go because you are you're selling your soul to the devil.
That's very sad, actually.
And then since then, well, this is when he moved to another place, which happens after the C++. He learned that the general belief, at least among executives and venture capitalists, is that Lucid failed because he did. Perhaps he did, and he certainly felt like he did. Um, yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So that actually reminded me of an interesting lesson here. I learned though a lot of business practice in the United States, and it seems to me that the blame for Lucid's failure lies squarely at the feet of American business education, as amplified by Lucid's next to last CEO, which is gonna be like the villain, I guess. So what would they do? That's actually pretty interesting. They would do a CISC, multi-processor. Well, that was the original project, right?
Yeah, but then they moved to a RISC processor because, yeah, compilers targeting complex instructions is like kind of annoying.
Yeah, essentially also because writing a compiler takes advantage of complex instructions is not only annoying but complicated. It's actually like I don't know if I'm gonna say bullshit, but my understanding is that this is still a debate of the whole. Okay, if we have simpler instructions, you're gonna have to generate more code to do complex operations. Uh, but the maintainability of having complex instructions on the first place, so you have less code to generate, and it's natively supported by the hardware, is that trade worth it? So that's something to think about. Uh, okay, so after that, yeah, he talks about renting a place with someone else. Um,
Yeah, it's the return of Bill from Stanford.
yeah. Uh,
And then there's the anecdote about the.
oh yeah, this is also very interesting to highlight. So we need actually to go back a little bit. The first company I looked at had developed a simple internet local area network for fast food joints. Each cash register would be a node on the network, which would download its transactions to a backroom computer every few minutes, thereby making it less likely for one of the poorly paid hamburger salespeople to rip off the franchise. In fact, the design of the register itself made it almost impossible to steal from. The keyboard was bulletproof.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's actually very hilarious. But then apparently that's actually not a feature, that's a bug. Because when the business people came in and said, well, this is very interesting, but it's clear that these people have no business sense, because everybody knows, apparently, allegedly, that the way kids working hamburger joints make money is by stealing from the cash register.
Can't you
Damn.
just, if you expect them to steal $20 a day, can't you just pay them $20 a day more and just not have them steal from you?
I don't think that's how that works because it's not because you are preemptively giving them the money they would get by stealing, they will stop stealing. People that just think that stealing is fine, especially at this age, they actually don't care. So the more the better, I guess.
That's terrible.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Yeah. So along constructing a business plan, I had made the case that the rise of artificial intelligence in the marketplace, coupled with the need for commercial implementations of Common Lisp on standard hardware, was significant enough that it was a focus of the full upstream computer company we proposed. Yeah. Coach me how to be a founder, what would happen.
Disturbing thing. Apparently, one of the founders will live in disgrace within a year or two.
Yeah, but that's actually like how can I say tradition apparently. So Victoria said that regardless of how things went, one of the founders would quit. Okay, so then we have our first CEO, so Tony Zlokun, I guess.
Yeah,
He
I'm not
had
sure how to pronounce his name either.
he had been the CEO of IntelliCorp, who took it public and forced out. He came from New England. Then we have this guy as the vice president of engineering. Um, and they knew each other, and well, Joe McCarthy as well. There's a bunch of info about him. Okay, his only weakness is that he tended to play by the book or by rules of honor. Because of this, he could come off as colder in person when in fact he was neither. And then we have Eric as the main technical guy. So he worked on the portable standard Lisp, which is not far from the portable common Lisp. Uh, and then Eric could do brilliant prototypes and could press ahead toward a commercial product when required, though this wasn't his first choice. Every now and then he came with a bright shiny object syndrome. When working on one thing in the boring stage of getting the details right, he'll get distracted by the next exciting project. Yeah, this is very This is the importance of having a steady and like focused. I guess not surrounding by the boring parts of it. Every process will probably have boring parts of it, regardless of the end goal and regardless how fun it is.
You
Every
just have to
portion,
push through them.
yeah, you have to be steady and push through them because if you keep doing this, you're never gonna get anything done. Uh, we also have Brooks, which was another main technical guy. Um, he got into a divorce situation. Well, Brooks. Um, Gilbert was in the same Stanford class with Gabriel. Uh,
Very risk averse,
okay,
apparently.
so Jim McDonnell was this is the guy that took over in design and over engineering his programs, but uh, although was tough to get them to work completely, they had the right architecture. He couldn't accept doing the minimum amount of work to get things to work well. That's actually a very interesting decision because if you think about it, usually we do the minimum amount of work to get something working, not working well. But this guy actually had the chance to stop when it was working well, and he purposely decided to continue.
He
That's
wanted things
interesting.
to be completely bulletproof, apparently.
Um, More characters such as Bill and Scott.
Well, well, Bill, he was mentioned already. Apparently, he wrote the reader.
Yeah, the reader for the interpreter.
One bug in 10 years.
One bug in 10 years, which is actually impressive. Okay, so this is the business plan. So this is the entry of of this. AI was taking off, and Lisp was its language. Lisp machine companies were doing great, which is actually a pretty wild statement. There
Well,
was
they
a new,
were until they weren't.
yeah, but there was a reality in which this was true. And there was a new standard for Lisp, Common Lisp. Two of the designers of Common Lisp were the founders of the company, Lucid. Workstations were fast enough to run Lisp as well as Lisp machines did, and at a fraction of the cost. They were the best, and they had friends with DARPA, which was planning to buy a lot of Lisp over the next few years.
Until it wasn't.
So 600,000 instant capital um, from
Bunch
Sun
of computers.
Microsystems. Yeah. Uh, we found a building, a law firm, a bank, a business card firm, a used furniture place.
The
They
works.
yeah they're bootstrapping the entire thing. Uh, Hiring more people. Yeah, so then we okay, so this is interesting. So Common Lisp is very large. The informal specification is 600 pages long and contains almost 800 functions. And they needed to start from scratch. Okay, but this is wild. Each of us had written at least one Lisp system before, so there was no doubt we could do it. We decided to be self-hosted because why not? Well, not self-hosted, right? Maybe those are two different Lisps. Which meant that the bulk of the code was written in the language implemented. Okay, then it became self-hosted. So they used Franz Lisp, which is I think this is the competitor Lisp at the time, right?
Yep,
With a
but
common Lisp
it had.
compatibility package.
Yep.
The underlying system under the hood was to manipulate raw data using special operators. We could code essentially at the assembly language level for almost everything. This meant that the memory manager and all sorts of low-level parts of the system could be easily written and debugged. Um, yeah, this is where I got introduced to the fact that car can also be used for trees.
Well, there's no reason other than convention that you use con cells to build linked lists. You could just use them to build binary trees.
Yeah, no, that actually makes sense, but I never thought of that. Um, yeah, so this is actually interesting. Are these different cars?
Ah, yes. In this
Yes.
case, they are.
Yeah, so this is like in Haskell, you have something on the left side and something on the right side, but they are not the same thing.
Even though they have
Over,
the same name, yeah.
yeah, they are. Yes, they are have some sort of overloading in there. Open codes the call to car into a series of machine instructions, and the effect of the define is to register the existence of the function assessing the series of instructions. So they divide it out. Each module is assigned to a developer and a buddy. The buddy will participate in the detailed design of the module, design reviews, code reviews, plan reviews, and the test code reviews. That's a lot of reviews.
Yeah, yeah,
The
it
buddy
is.
was someone to talk to, and also someone who could step in if the main developer was
Incapacitated.
incapacitated. No coding could start until a design document was created. Yeah, this is a very bold choice. You are forcing people to write natural language before drafting. That's something. Well, but I guess if everyone already wrote a list before, they don't really need a draft.
They have
Uh,
experience.
and it needed to be reviewed by the buddy and a group of developers. The buddy reviewed the code and the review committee, and was the test plan as was the test plan the test code. We use a simple configuration management system and informal ways of checking the testing parts of the system. It could have mentioned what were we calling formal in this context. That would be nice. So after a month of design, yeah, this is very well. Within 6 months, they had something working. We are in what? Going to a year, and Karuta is still not working. Well, we have to
I mean,
accept our. Well, we're gonna get there at some point eventually.
to be fair, they were working on this thing full time, right?
Yeah, that's also fair. Um, in the first year, we managed to raise roughly 3.5 million of venture capital from these companies, and they also sign up as OEMs, which is also part of the problem later. Yeah, we're gonna have a problem. We're already 17 minutes in, and we haven't. I think we are like close to half of this one. I don't think that's gonna fly.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to be a little bit more to filter more. Yeah, so 25 employees at some point. That's pretty good. They had a jacket with Lucid stamped, which is also cool. Texas Instruments was already a thing, which is kind of interesting. This company still exists.
Yep.
Xerox, which is also legendary. Uh, blah, blah, blah. The jackets were fabulous, according to Gamer. Uh,
This is like the second time he uses the words fabulous in this chapter, which I think is interesting.
I was not counting at all. Oh, and this is also very cool. Apparently, Gabriel was the sensei of benchmarks. So there is something called Gabriel benchmarks.
I mean, he was involved in the Common Lisp committee himself, so, that's not very surprising.
And their benchmarks were better than almost anyone else's. Damn. And then, yeah, we displayed my benchmark book and the Commonwealth book, of which I was one of the 5 front cover listed contributors, and then the story of how I was the father of Common Lisp. That's main respect.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so that year, in 1985, they came up with a force far stronger than the City Hall, IBM. Because IBM was developing a RISC computer. So there's that. They actually talked to IBM to do a commercial version of Common Lisp, but there were some problems such as like the the the, the templating for the documents of IBM. That they would have to make one from scratch. I think. Yeah, they also fucked up the deadline. I remember reading that.
Yeah.
So there's all of that. Yeah, they don't have IBM's standard documentation. If it is not developed to commercial standards, it's not IBM standard. Is it documentation though? I don't remember what they didn't have according to IBM's standard.
Because they were trying to reuse the code from Spice Lisp, which was developed in a university.
Yeah, but there was something about documentation, I think. Or am I tripping? Maybe I'm tripping. Yeah, they have to have the
Mm.
full environment, editor, debugging, development tools,
And a Windows system.
and a Windows system. Yeah, that's a lot of things. Okay, then what happened next? Um, oh yeah, this is the documentation requirements. IBM had their own standard format and all documentation had to conform to it. If the product was a language product, that had to conform as well. The format required one page per function. It didn't matter that there was a commercial book that defined the language and it was suitable even as a user's guide. We had to do it our own. Yeah, that sounds boring as fuck.
That sounds incredibly annoying and
Yeah,
also
then
counterproductive.
yeah, then he made a parallel with the whole shoot like uh, what's it called? Uh, yeah, Pierre Menard. So apparently he wrote. Yeah, this is incredibly confusing. I don't know if I'm smoking or they smoked.
No, no, no. It's a book about a guy who wanted to be the author of Don Quixote.
No, no, no. That part I understand. Because there are three characters in this story. There is George Luis, there is Menard, and there's Cervantes, right?
Cervantes
The
is the actual author of Don Quixote,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. But that's the crazy portion of it. This guy is writing about another guy that wanted to be the author of something, but when the first guy wrote the same thing as the original one, somehow people are interpreting as like a different thing. Am I crazy? Isn't this what is being said in here? Like, look at it. It is a revelation to compare Menard's Don Quixote with Cervantes. The latter, for instance, wrote. So this is Cervantes. Truth, whose mother is history, who is the river of time, depository of deeds, witness of the past, example and lesson to the present, and warning to the future. Written in the 17th century. Written by Cervantes. And then Menard wrote the same thing. This is literally like a verbatim, but apparently this third guy, George Luis, is making an argument that these two things mean different things.
Ah, no, no. I think, yeah, you didn't get it. This George Louis dude, he wrote this book about Pierre Menard, but Pierre Menard is actually a fictional character.
That doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter the if they are real or not. I just want to understand, regardless of if this is fiction or not. History marvels truth. The idea is astounding. Menard, a contemporary of William James, does not define history as an investigation of reality, but as its origin. Historical truth for him is not what took place. The final clauses, blah blah blah.
It's
Uh,
like it's basically this. The story is a fictional review comparing the Don Quixote written by Menard with the Don Quixote written by Cervantes, essentially.
yeah, but like I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the joke, but I don't understand. I didn't under, I read this several times because this is essentially making a connection about the whole documentation bullshit. So he's basically trying to say that IBM was saying that this was different than this, but they were essentially the same thing, and that's the irony, or
Yeah,
this is the fun. And I was
yeah.
like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is this? I have no under like I man, I was so lost on this. Anyway,
It's the Pierre Menard edition of Common Lisp the language.
yeah. Uh, yeah, this project damaged Lucid. We had about 1 year to do 2 or 3 years of work. Uh, yeah, they could not do it. And then later, IBM's requirements process in the direction of duplicating the Lisp machine environments. But with our relationship with IBM, which paid well and led to further agreements with IBM on their platforms, further to abandon their philosophy of development. And the worst of all is that it sold poorly. The RTPC was a flop. So all of that work, all of that sacrifice for nothing.
Very terrible.
Very terrible indeed. And then he's talking about this DCO. Yeah, it is odd. Still. AI promised to eliminate the drudgery of using computers to bring human level intelligence to computers enhanced to companies.
But don't companies already have human level intelligence because they have human, staff?
Well, but that's not to the computers.
I mean, sure,
Uh,
but that implies that the company's intelligence is limited to the intelligence of their computers. What about the people?
uh, yeah, but that's kind of the thing. I think that was the entire reason because when you're writing fiction, for example, your characters they can be only so smart as the writer. But computers don't work like that. We create them, we study them, we improve them, but they are not as smart as their makers. And I think what they were trying to achieve was kind of to break that logic of like maybe we can make the computers as smart as we are, especially because there was a drudgery of using computers.
I
So
see.
blah blah blah. Yeah, so this is an example of an oil company, and then AI was a potential solution to this particular budget. Well, it's expensive to be an oil company essentially. But it's hard to tune for accuracy because people use all sorts of common sense and judgment along with strictly codifiable rules. Okay, they were founded almost exclusively by AI faculty from universities, the AI companies, including the competitors, I guess. Yeah, so this is also a very interesting lesson that the companies academics have an interesting view of business. They equate business with war. A company wins because other companies lose. Literally, this is literally um, an isomorphic fallacy to the whole sum zero game sum zero game situation.
Yeah, you're basically assuming that like you can't have like no losers essentially.
Yeah, so the idea that for somebody to win, in order for somebody to win, somebody has to lose. That's that's what this is an idea that has hundreds of years of age, I think, already, and we're still following on this one. And don't even take it from my knowledge. Take it from Gabriel himself.
Well, he's
Uh,
talking about misunderstanding evolution, but it's also a misunderstanding of economics. So,
yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I haven't read the chapter that is the last one that you're gonna do on Sunday yet. But I think he's gonna say evolution in terms that we can immediately talk about economics naturally,
he, yeah, he will.
because the only way to conclude that evolution is not a winning losing sum zero game is by using premises that are also used in economics. So to me, this is just not a facade, but like a mask. Like you put the mask of evolution, but behind the mask there's economics lurking there. A company keeps everything secret. A company tries to spy on other companies. A company cannot trust anyone not part of themselves. Which means that there's no partnerships. That's what it
Eh,
means. A partner learning of your plans could move in your business, couldn't it? That partner could steal your ideas. AI academics didn't have a good idea of how AI technology would spread to the mainstream. They made a mistake of assuming technology was in the mainstream when a company that is considered mainstream was using it for something. Which is also very interesting if you compare with like today, 2025. Companies serving Wall Street were considered the most mainstream companies around, even though every company has an advanced development group and groups dedicated to exploring the effectiveness of new technologies. So just because Morgan Stanley has an AI project doesn't mean that AI is being used in Morgan Stanley's day-to-day operations. Well, then this is where the parallel with today falls apart a little bit, because
AI
it
hype, basically.
yeah, it is growing horizontally. It's not a particular instance. So that's the difference there. That's the difference there. Uh, the AI companies have no realistic plan to move their expert systems into the mainstream. They were using a large standard language. They had two large tools, and the systems built were large because the ambition level of the early adopters was high. Sorry. So there's that. Yeah. Then there goes the RAM problem. That memory was not cheap. Memory was not cheap,
Yep.
which is a problem for them. No one bothered to mention that the operating system and Windows system for the platform required 3.5 megabytes, and that paging over the network is something that worked best in the abstract. Many of the companies that could have warned us of these requirements decided not to. For example, the CEO of one of the AI companies told me that they would not tell us their customers' requirements because they didn't want us in touch with them should we decide to move into the AI market at some point. So this is the mistrust that he's talking about. He's literally protecting, like, avoiding interaction between the people that build stuff with the people that want stuff built. Because
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
besides, business was a Darwinian affair after all, and if we were to survive, we would discover or understand those requirements ourselves. Health
Basically asking for them to be diviners.
diviners, you mean?
Yeah, divine the like divination.
Ah. Um, okay, let's review the plan before we examine how it went wrong. AI was coming out of the academia. That software was written in Lisp. The Lisp machine companies were doing great. AI was grabbing all of the headlines. AI companies were using Lisp. Lisp machines were not a cost-effective way to deliver. Essentially, all the computer companies wanted to get into the AI bandwagon. There, were, there was a new standard dialect of Lisp called Common Lisp, and there's DARPA. So the strategy is become the common Lisp provider through OEM relationships with as many standard platform companies as possible, provide a path for Lisp machines to these platforms, provide the most faithful to the standard, reliable, high performance implementation we could within budget constraints. Yeah, so essentially, like, we have these partners. They are looking for Lisp stuff. We can make Lisp stuff, so let's do that efficiently.
Yeah, basically the idea was Lisp machines, they don't seem effective. They were kind of betting that they would fail, which they did. So the plan was, okay, let's make a Lisp that runs on standard platforms, and then let's make it faithful to the standards, so the people who are using Lisp machines have a migration path for it, right?
Oh, oh damn.
That was the idea with 3 points.
Okay, let's try. Hello.
Hey, Lemus. Hello.
Yeah, you started clipping very badly there.
Oh,
Okay, can you repeat the last part?
yeah. So like, if you look at those 3 points together, the idea was, okay, Lisp machines, they're not effective. We expect them to fail in the future. So let's make a Lisp that runs on standard platforms. So the people on Lisp machines have a migration path, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
kind of what I got
yeah,
from the
but
plan.
yeah, but the premise, one of the premises failed.
Yeah, because of IBM,
Ah!
basically.
No, he didn't say that. He said that the marketplace was not there because the AI companies were over-promising and under-delivering, and the early adopters were not succeeding as well as they hoped, and therefore there was little movement towards the mainstream. I don't
Okay,
know.
that's also fair.
Yeah, the company was up to 75 people, almost all technical. Um.
By the way, you're not sharing the screen
Oh, my bad.
because you left and joined. Thanks.
Is the screen there?
Yes. It's loading for me.
Yeah, it's also loading for me, so I don't know if it's gonna share second time. The sound, it did the sound, but it's still loading for me.
Yeah, loading.
Let's try this one more time. One more time.
Celebration.
I don't think my screen is
That's
going
a ref.
back on.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's fine. I can follow along with the page on my
Yeah, but
file
I'm
here.
already scrolling, so how are you gonna tell that I'm not on that page anymore?
That's fair.
Yeah, so I have no idea what happened. Everything is normal here. Let's try sharing the entire screen. Yeah,
Still
this is
nothing.
even better. Technical problems aside, uh, as expected, some of the AI companies moved towards C because worse is better, of course. Uh, yeah, a key problem was the environment that IBM paid us to implement, in which we tried to palm off our OEMs. Sun was creating their own environment, which was using the competitor Lisp, Franz Common Lisp. Uh, and then the CEO was puzzled why AI and Lisp were not taking off. He had been careful with money, worked well with investors. He did great, but the market wasn't happening. And he didn't know what to do. I just come to work and sit there and I feel powerless. I don't know what to do. I don't think I can do this job anymore. You have to help me get out of it. Uh, yeah, the market was basically saying no to Lisp after that. More C.
Marcy, unfortunately.
They removed the CEO and started the research of a new CEO.
Britton Curvy, one of the investors on the board, took over as CEO.
I came under criticism for my laissez-faire role, and people talked to Rig about it. One day I became paranoid about it and asked Juicy if he had been speaking ill of me to Rig, and he said he hadn't been. But even the suggestion of dishonor was enough. Juicy left in disgrace. Yeah, so the friends, these are the characters of the beginning of the story.
Yeah. Very sad.
What would have happened had Lucid been a typical startup? It might have tried to make some changes to its products to increase their sellability, and the revenues would have peaked and then declined or maybe stayed flat, and the venture capitalists would have sold out to the employees or asked the company to check back with them in a couple of years. Yeah, so then we go to the into the ground C++. So this is the I remember one very specific thing about this. They in this one they will shift gears from Lisp completely, but try to keep some of the Lisp philosophy and try to bake that into C++, which I think they were essentially trying to pull it off an interactive development environment for C++. So, like we're talking about being able to trace stuff, like you do with Common Lisp, but for C++.
Imagine if they had succeeded.
Man, that would be so weird. That would have been one of the weirdest things ever. Then he talks about this guy, which I think this is the guy, right? This is the main
Yeah,
villain.
that's the guy.
He smoked. He was a smoker there.
And he never stops talking.
Never stops talking. And they hired him, the Bob guy. So he was a little bit proactive in that. Yeah, we knew about where low-level implementation languages in developers' environments. What we thought the market was up to was a shift toward object-oriented development in C++ in particular. We identified two potential products. One was a development environment for C++ that was based on a version of Emacs, a text editor customized for the job, and the other was a development environment for C++ that was based on more of the features you knew about the Lisp world. So again, both ideas are essentially trying to jam Lisp stuff into a C++ stuff. Well, I'm gonna maybe jam is not the correct word because to me now this makes sense that will never ever worked, but to them at the time maybe this seemed like have a chance. Um, so they
Yeah,
decided to
they
go with
want.
the latter, which is the development environment for C++. That was based on the features we knew about in the Lisp world. Go.
Yeah, basically they wanted to have Lisp-like tooling for C++, essentially.
Yeah, Lisp like imagine that for a moment. Lisp like tooling, but in C++. Uh, so then, well, they decided to go with the latter, as I said. Uh, so now we're trying to raise money from other places aside from the venture capitalists. They had a layoff, and Bob was not there because he always, coincidentally, he always gets sick on layoff days. I think it's at least 3 times in this book. Well, not in this book, in this chapter, that they're gonna have layoffs and Bob is sick.
Yeah, that's not good.
Um, and then, then where is it? The board of investors, I think. They were talking about CEO and president, and they were essentially questioning Gabriel's role in this thing if Bob was going to take over anyway. And then he wrote, "This letter is being sent to inform you that I am resigning as president of Lucid. It is my desire, however, to retain as CTO. Although this resignation has the effect of forfeiting my managerial responsibilities and authority, I will provide directions for these groups and individuals assigned to me at the time of this resignation until the new CEO has either reassigned me within the organization or has designated a successor or successors to manage these groups and individuals." Uh, yeah, so that was that. So they would have to run against time, right? Because the Lisp revenues would eventually decline, and they knew that for a fact. Uh, and then yeah, there's another lesson in here. Here, even though they said the decline was, they knew the decline was certain, they were merely growing more slow than we have hoped. So actually, this is more like a hindsight type of situation that you was actually. It's not that your idea didn't work, didn't have potential. It is just that they built the wrong product. In the end, France would claim that because they had to struggle to stay alive, they simply did whatever a customer wanted, and therefore they built a friendly product. However, the differences actually were that they could not afford to do as much as we could, and in particular, they not built a Lisp machine-like environment, but a low-tech one like the first idea, which is in the Emacs, that they consider for C++. Yeah. Almost all investors believe that Lisp would recover, and only only some more perseverance. So this thing again, right? Being able to ask the people that wants things built what they want, have a more interaction with the customer.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So the decline in the Lisp market, more names. They hired Patrick, which is a Texas Instruments Explorer Lisp, well, architect of the Texas Instruments Explorer machine. Um, more story, more description. Patrick
And then they
liked his
went,
fast cars.
yeah, and then they went on a road trip apparently.
Yeah, they went into a road trip. Yeah, like I said, I would only be able to remember these type of chapters if I read them multiple times and I was enjoying the heck out of them. Because to me, like, this is more like a, how can I say? It's more exposition, right?
Yeah, it's almost biographical in some sense, right?
Yeah, I would say actually it is. Not almost. I would say actually it is. Which is fine. Is his book, but I think the lessons about the experience is what we're looking for. But they are spread out across this. So more about the road trip. Then he's talking about writing a poem. Yeah, okay. Now we are back into the story. After years, we're previewing Energize, the marketing name for the project. Um, Patrick adopted some of my newfound love of the Southwest during his years at Lucid. Okay. More road trips. I don't remember what is the point of developing so much of Patrick.
Well, they were on the road trip together, right?
Yeah, no, but he also went to the bathroom millions of times. He's not saying here. So like, what is? I think this means that Patrick is an important character, but I don't remember Patrick being an important
Oh, it's
character.
on that. By the time we got back, we had a good idea of the starting point for Cadillac. The team would change quite a bit over the next few years, and the core team, anchored by Patrick, grew.
Okay,
So,
so that's
like,
why Patrick. Okay, that's why Patrick is an important character. Lucy didn't have a true marketing department, though the few marketing people we did have were good Marcon people and good executives. We had neither the resources nor they the interest in finding about the marketplace for C++. That's very bold. And we needed requirements because they don't know the shit, right?
yeah, they're coming from Lisp.
They were coming from a Lisp background. Yeah, now we go to versus better. I have recently written and presented my paper known as Worse is Better, in which the problems with over-engineering and over-designing were played out, and we therefore adopted the stubby pencil approach, which was to be as low-tech as we could in both our approach to the problem and our solution. The simplest way, the fewest features, the most straightforward implementation. We moved the group downstairs into the basement to have the worst office space, taking over all the old RT-PC area which had no windows. Okay, so they basically went to a dungeon. Okay.
No dragons,
Uh,
fortunately.
yeah. Yeah, throwing stubby pencils sharpened with a knife. Okay, so essentially, let's go to a dungeon and go crazy in there.
Let's become cave people. Return to monkey.
Yeah. What we were trying to build was a development environment that would provide tools for the construction and long-term maintenance of object-oriented C++ systems. Yeah, that still sounds weird, no matter how many times I read it.
You know what's even more weird? Hearing C++ described as rudimentary, which was true back then, but nowadays it's like, dude, this thing is huge.
Uh, well, of course, they thought that OO was the next thing, the next big thing, and the complexity of the language made the development environment necessary, which is actually true, right? When you have such an extensive and diverse set of tools, it's nice to have an environment that you can interact with them more easily, I guess. We
Yeah.
told them that our philosophy was to do things in the open rather than under known disclosure. That would be yeah. Oh yeah, I also remember this. They essentially are taking the opposite route of the war approach. Because remember, the war approach is everything is a secret, everything is within us, we don't trust anybody, everybody is a villain. They are doing the complete opposite route this time, which is well because they are not they completely changed strategy. They are now asking people about it, like openly.
Yup.
Um, and they even said uh, that we will be talking about the outside view of the product, its design to any level of detail, the technology to any level of detail, that we would leave copies of the slides, they could take notes, they could use any of the ideas, they could tell anyone about it. So the complete opposite route of the war one. Uh, which was a hacker to hacker discussion. And they were praised for our unusual and common sense philosophy, which is wild. That this is unusual. Uh,
And apparently, people who heard those ideas actually didn't use them because of not invented here.
yeah, never use their ideas. Our philosophy was that if people adopt our approach to environments, it would be easier for us to thrive because the environment would be predisposed to our way of doing things. So they're essentially trying to put, yeah, this is like a reverse engineering process. So in order for supply to make sense, you have to have demand. How do you make demand? Well, you convince people that matters. And that's what they attempted to do, but they actually didn't succeed on that. We didn't do marketing the traditional way, and it was just an engineering-driven project. What else? Yeah, so there's also something about annotations. Annotations are a generalization of hypertext. I still haven't understood what they mean. An annotation is an object along with an associated set or sequence of other objects. An annotation acts as a link among these other objects. Each annotation is an instance of a class to which methods can be attached. An example annotation is the simple link associated with a sequence of two objects. When both objects are text, the annotation is merely hypertext. I don't understand what they mean.
Okay, you know how in HTML you have the DOM nodes, which
Yes,
represent images and graphics and animations and text and all sorts of things, links and such?
yes, yes, yes.
Basically that, but generalized into arbitrary language objects.
Hmm. They have a database, and that database was managed by a kernel. The annotation is active. Methods are attached to annotations by being associated with a class. With annotations, you can take an ordinary textual display of a program and decorate it with error message with breakpoints. Yeah, so this is a strategy to essentially make an IDE.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so IDE, okay. Yeah, they had like pop-ups.
Yup.
Yeah, but they don't even have pop-ups Oh, actually that's not true. They do have pop-ups in Common Lisp. Uh, the kernel learns about the programs by listening to a stream of data. Yeah, are they making a rudimentary primitive version of LSP?
Uh,
Because LSP
kind,
is a protocol that is independent of the language.
kinda.
Um, the whole
But
user interface was aimed at exhibiting a characteristic called ready to hand. Go on.
yeah, the difference here is that this is integrated with the compiler, right? The
Yeah, no, this
LSP is
comes bundled,
separate.
right? This comes bundle with it. Yeah, but that's kind of kills the point, right? Because if I have a G,
Actually, but interestingly enough, the Zig people actually don't. Well, at least the compiler developers, they actually are not a big fan of the fact that there's a ZLS, the Zig language server, separate from the compiler. Because here's the problem: the LSP server actually needs to do most of the same, a lot of the same analysis that the compiler itself already does. So it's actually
hmm
better if the compiler just does it for you and speaks LSP or some other protocol.
yeah, but that's what I said. If you are shipping your this thing with your G++ compiler, why you're trying to make it language independent? The only use case for that, if you're doing that with more than G++, if you're doing GCC, if you're doing other languages as well. But that's not what they're doing. They're doing exclusively C++. Actually, that I lied. Maybe they are doing for GCC because they mentioned C/C++ at some point. Yeah. So maybe the idea was that you can just like bake that into any compiler, and they chose these two in particular. Maybe.
Maybe.
Um, yeah. So ready to hand. A tool is ready to hand when it's used submerges below consciousness. A hammer is the best example. You use a hammer as if it were an extension of your arm. You don't think about how to use the hammer, just as you never think about using your hand. You simply use it. That's a very interesting definition for a tool.
No, no,
So
no. It's a definition for being ready to hand. That's slightly different.
no, but this is being, right? So a tool, okay, a tool being this. This is a very interesting definition for a property, I guess. Uh, they got more capital to hire more people, more story. They ramped up development between 1990 and 1991 with 5.4 million in venture capital based on a prototype. It's crazy that like 5.4 million bucks is a lot of money, man.
And back then, with less inflation,
Yeah, no, crazy shit.
yeah.
Um, at that stage, well, Bob had told one of the developers that he would be damned if he was going to be the CEO of a company growing at 15% per year. At that stage, 15% growth in Lisp looked pretty good.
Yeah, he turned Lisp into a cash cow, apparently.
And a cash cow is a standard term that means a product that made a lot of profit at expense of moving it forward. To do this, we stopped all development of our main products and kept only the smallest support crew, including a handful of developers. Okay, so essentially trying to to make it like move forward in terms of development.
Yeah, basically the idea is okay, we have the Lisp business. Let's use it as a source of money and actually pour the money into other things, not reinvest it back into Lisp.
Yeah. Very very sad. Uh, uh, the people in Lisp who were no longer needed were offered positions in the Cadillac group. This was good because they can keep their jobs, but it wasn't good because most of the people in the Cadillac group were Lisp people to begin with, and it was tough to see people half forced into a project in language they didn't care for a while, and they didn't care
While the
for why
language
the language
and
and projects they loved were being bled dry. Yeah, so this is
yeah,
like, I don't want to do this. Get me out of here. Not everyone is not done that wants to do that is okay doing JavaScript. Not everyone. Not everyone. Bob's reasoning was based on assuming that Lisp was a mature market declining away. It certainly isn't large in 1996, but there still are thriving Lisp companies, some which have grown since then. Bob's interest was partially like the board's. Okay, let's see what Anton is saying. I still believe that's a long-running joke from your side. Am I joking? Uh, I'll let you
are you,
judge that. Am I joking? Uh, yeah. So Bob is an asshole, essentially. That's this is what this is saying, because well, at least acting like an asshole, because he's essentially just there for the money. He didn't care about how the company would succeed, what he would be, what the company would be pushing forward,
yeah,
and he didn't even particularly care about the people in it. That's a
yeah,
very shady thing to do. Yeah, so the people started not liking it, essentially. And that's not all. Bob had a lot of bad qualities. He smoked. He
he didn't just smoke; he smoked a lot.
yeah. Yeah. So when this happened, like I never knew who he talked to on the phone, but there was a few tangible results expressing his finances. So there was a phone out there, and Bob spent the whole day out there on the phone smoking, meeting with his direct reports. And he didn't put Gabriel in the loop for that, which is weird because Gabriel already participated on the fundraising. After this, I started to think that Bob was trying to like um, trick trick Gabriel. Um, yeah, so he was selfish, like in a very bad sense of the word, egocentric apparently. Yeah, this is also awesome. Like this is so funny. I had since learned our first meeting. The reason he talked the way he did was that his speech apparatus was almost always connected to his thought process, and what I was hearing was his thinking out loud. This partially explains why I could understand only about half of what he was saying. Others thought he was pretty smart, and maybe he was, but it is hard for me to tell. I don't think I'm a particularly stupid person, but many conversations with him were mystifying to me. He would talk for hours on end, rambling about while he tried to unravel a thread of reasoning or solve a problem. At first, I took what he was saying as an explanation or an answer. It was more like a dream. Come on, man. Uh, we needed to have a close connection to a compiler because we had to modify it to annotate the source code. Yeah, so this is essentially like you are hooking your entire environment apparatus into an existing compiler. That sounds
Yep.
that sounds a little sus because if the compiler is fucked, like how can you know beforehand that it's actually going to be not an Herculean effort to pull that off? I don't know. That sounds like bold. That sounds bold to me.
Yeah.
And they chose G++ because of course. Um, they tried other compilers, but they were rightly not interested in doing a lot of work for a development environment with
With
no
no
obvious
obvious market.
market to
Yeah.
them. So we decided to buy a compiler company. Damn. Okay, so you go to the how you say, you go to the market and you say, hey, I need a compiler. and nobody wants to give you a compiler, and you say, okay, I'm gonna buy you then. Doesn't matter. It was a local company that had produced a compiler with a very good compiler code performance. It took 6 to 9 months to get the entire deal done. The tried and true lawyers had hired early on, who were told to protect us from the mistakes with OEMs, weren't told anything different about this deal, and so tried to protect us. So again, being very suspicious, being very pedantic, being very not non-friendly. After that, fire them and went with the Palo Alto. Well, again, another legendary place, very Silicon Valley style law firms. So 12 people that made the performant compiler with some OEM revenues and show string operation. They moved to their building and they were highly paid. Uh, and their knowledge, talent, and work ethic surpassed theirs, man. Damn. Uh,
Yep.
they modified Emacs to do the thing. Uh, Man, this seems like a lot of work. Like, you need to hook into the compiler, you need to hook the text editor, and you need to make the entire thing and like connect those three pieces together. That sounds like a lot of work.
And you should make all the infrastructure around it, right?
And you need to
Like
do
the
some convince
databases
people
in the
it's worth
kernel.
it.
Yeah.
They wrote their own grapher. The Lisp guys who were turning to C++ developers suffered about a factor of 3 decline in productivity for about the first 6 months to a year, which improved to only about a 30% loss in the steady state. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Uh, so Tony was depressed, so he left. Okay. Bob liked full language meetings, which was not doesn't if it's in excess doesn't create a good environment for a company anyway. Uh, okay, so then they would finish the product in 2 years, but Bob said no. I give you only a half of that.
Of course.
Bob became more nervous. Uh, okay, this is actually funny. Then troubles with Emacs hit, and we needed to move over more of the Lisp guys to help out. Troubles with GDB and the Grapher NCR took over, caused more problems. Then there was the bug curve. People took vacations and got sick. Ah. Then they had a problem with storage, which well, uh, they have well, this is a DBMS of sorts. So that's something. Again, a lot of moving parts. You have the text, you have a text editor, you have a grapher, you have a compiler, you have a database, you have all of those things.
Did SQLite already exist back then?
I have no idea, man. Uh, they launched in 1992 as expected from before. It didn't happen half of the time. But unfortunately, the others did not come in at a rate to keep us afloat according to our plans. We got a
So
1.3 million bridge loan. Not good.
yeah,
Uh, and then Gabriel left for a year. Uh, well, partially left, so he did half time. But because another layoff would happen in September. Yeah, everything is falling down. burning and going and crashing out. On the Lisp side, the OEMs were doing poorly because they had no incentive to push the product, so I negotiated back the rights back to almost all the vendor lines. This increased the amount of we got per sale, but that was more than offset by the lowered volume because we had no sales force to handle Lisp. And then they stopped doing marketing, which is, well, now people don't know that you were doing Lisp actually. 20 people were laid off. Sick, remember. Another again. Uh, I went on leave and watched events from afar. Yeah, so this is where he started looking to another place to work in.
Yep.
Uh, to replace me as an effective vice president of engineering, they hired Warren, which was a very well-known Lisp guy who had run a large group at a large hardware company. His management skills were poor, but I was unable to figure out that out from his references and the other checks I made. Well, hiring process, I guess. The only negative I heard from Warren's references was that he often sided with engineers too much. What is that even supposed to mean? Come on, man.
Yeah.
This is not tribalism. Like there are benefits of having management people being understanding engineering. There are benefits of on that happening. It's not by coincidence. It's not a mere coincidence that when Intel actually had business slash management only CEOs, they they were not doing their best. I'm gonna say that. Um, they got well,
Apparently,
another.
Warren got into fights.
Yeah, Warring was also a little bit egocentric. Yeah, then they started measuring effort to lay off even more people.
And then Bob had a brilliant idea.
Yeah, measuring the times worked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not how you manage. That's not how you assess effort, my dude. That's not how you assess effort in that. I rather use productivity, but well. Um,
Bobby felt that developers were lazy and coddled.
damn. Where is that?
The last paragraph in this page.
Oh yeah. Everyone else in the company was stupid or incompetent, never made schedules, always over engineer or upheld their plans. His disdain became apparent when he faced the prospect of this guy quitting about a year before Lucid folded. Um, okay, this is, again very seems like an asshole. He essentially said, "No, man, you're actually pretty great," but in the next morning he was searching for somebody to replace the guy. Ah. What happened to
Yeah.
Energize? It never took off, though it was doing reasonably well when the venture capitalists gave up on Lucid. Energize was, I think, an excellent product that might have done better under different circumstances. Yeah, so here's the summary. It used too many resources. It was a true three-tier architecture with a database server, an application server, and the clients. Because a database server was essentially performing a virtual memory function, there could be network performance problems at times. The clients were pretty fat, and when you tried to put the kernel and clients and compile on the same machine, you had paging problems. We had
Of
problems with
course.
quality because we were using public domain software. Yeah, this is something. This is something that Jonathan Blow is also pretty harsh about. He doesn't like open source precisely because of this. Because he allegedly witnessed software that was good getting degraded, like becoming worse as the open source process develops. Because and that actually, like, it's not insane to think that, because you think I think well, I know Jonathan thinks that, so I'm assuming that I'm him. I know that I'm better than the average developer. I write better code than an average developer. If I do my thing and then I open source it, now I have to deal with a community that will probably not want to use my standards for things, and they want to do contributions, but it's not really up to my standard on how to do things. That's one of the reasons that Jai is not open sourced. It's because Jonathan wants to have all the time and all the power to do the things in the way that he thinks is properly done. And he even said that even when it gets open sourced, he probably will have like he will open source into the wild and actually have he keep his own closed version. Like he will not necessarily include into his version of Jai the contributions from the community. That's how skeptical this man is. We had our own compiler on only a few platforms. C++ has its own problems, being a complex language where interesting OO languages can come mostly from COBOL programmers, and in shops where the level of language competence was not on par with what was needed to conquer C++. Yeah, damn, this the quality was not on par, man. The competence level was not on par. The complexity of C++ compilation model made incremental compilation difficult. Yeah, I heard about this in static languages before. Uh, that maybe that's not the only reason, but one of the reasons about incremental anything, not only compilation but also like the REPL, is that it's harder to do like to change a definition by being statically type checked.
It's not really about the static type checking. It's about the fact that you can they have separate compilation. That's a problem.
Yeah, but I was fairly certain that if you had to statically because let's say that you have 50 definitions on your thing, and you want to redefine the last one, but the last one uses things from all the other 50 ones. If you have to do a type checking process every time you do a redefinition, that sounds like something that's going to take a while potentially.
Unless you also have incremental type checking, which C++ doesn't have.
Well, of course, you add another feature to allow that to be faster, for sure. But I don't think C++ has
Like
has
the
that
problem
thing.
is not that you can't have incremental compilation on a static language. The problem is that you have to design the language to be incrementally compilable in a nice way.
Yeah,
Most
okay.
languages are not designed like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Rust has a problem regarding that, right? I believe there is something regarding the units, the smaller units that they have are not like files slash modules, but they are the whole crates instead,
Yeah, I think there are crates.
something like that.
Yeah, I'm not very well versed into that stuff, but maybe Rust has a problem that I don't know.
And that's why Zig went for the model where, okay, there's actually just a single compilation unit. We just have source code and we have one compilation unit that compiles everything, like the entire program. And the smallest unit of compilation is the function, basically. So now your model of compilation is very simple, and the smallest unit you have is actually the natural unit of abstraction in the language. So it matches well, you see.
Damn. In 1992, well, I understood what you said, Maria, just to clarify. In 1992, I started to get back on writing. I was attending a few local workshops and classes. Yeah, after Bob dropped the effort thing, I went to the workshops. Well, he strongly encouraged Gabriel to go. Um, No, 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 not Bob encouraged him, but this other person, Brad Loaf. Is that how you say that?
Brad Loaf is a place. It was Mark Strand actually.
Oh, here. Sorry. He's struggling encouraging, he needed potential greatness. Yeah, Bob would never encourage this because Bob is an asshole.
Well, he
Uh,
might because of what's in the next, well, two paragraphs after this one.
so he did that.
And then Bob wanted him to leave.
The board had asked for Bob to save 500 over the next 6 months. So, bye bye. Oh
Yeah.
man, man, he was shocked, a little shocked, mind you, little. So I thought our agreement covered exactly this case, anyhow it turned out the graceful exit he wanted was a leave of absence. I didn't take the whole thing very well and contacted a lawyer. The lawyer and I worked out a good deal, leaving me as chairman of the board. I stayed on the payroll until December and got some other concessions. It took me 3 days to find another place. Holy fuck. three
I mean, it's,
days.
I mean, it's Richard effing Gabriel. At this point, his reputation is well built already.
Man, but it's still 3 days. 3 days. Biber either was not a very good to long-term planner, which definitely seems like he was not, or
Long term being a few months.
was contemptuous of the board. When you lay off people, your expenses go up for the month of the layoff if you offer a severance package. Then the savings start to the following month. In September, they lay off a month, expenses went up. In October, they went down. But in November, Bob started hiring people again, and Warren in particular hired some of his favorite B and C players to replace. Wait, when you say B players, are we talking about B the language or B and C is
No,
like
no,
the?
no, 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 no. As in tier, like
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah. Okay, okay. I was about to say that there's
because
no fucking way they hired B developers.
because he didn't play nice with A players because apparently ego, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, egocentric. In November, salary rated expenses were back up to the August levels. Yeah, this is very weird. So you have a budget problem. So you lay off people just enough to give the impression that the expenses are now fine, and then you hire back the people, more people, and the expenses are as they were before, and not necessarily the same
Except
quality.
except it's worse people now, right?
Yeah, so like, what are we doing? What is the math that we are doing here?
Oh, and on the day of the layoff, Bob got sick and didn't come
Of
in.
course, man. Of course. I told you. It was either a lung problem or a heart problem. He went to have an EKG. He asked me to oversee the layoff in his place. I thought about his smoking and I wasn't sure what I hoped would happen. He had off a number of my close friends, the ones he thought were slacking off. In May 1993, 6 months earlier, the board had started trying to sell the company. And in December, they received a 3 million to 4.5 million offer from Borland. They denied, they denied, and of course, got only $1 million for it. Um,
No, no, no. They got $1 million offer that Veritas then changed their mind and said, nah, I don't think it's a good idea anymore. He pulled off the table.
oh, actually, yeah, I actually, I'm crazy. That actually happened. They got a lower offer, but then the buyer said, actually, not really, no, thanks. At the February 1994 board meeting, I mentioned to the investors that Bob's September layoffs they hadn't netted anything. At the next board meeting in April, they fired him and brought in a shutdown artist, Bill. Is this the same Bill as before from before? I don't think so.
Bill Gork. I don't think so.
Yeah. On Bob's last day, they let him quit for show. I told him that the new place has asked Gabriel to be the vice president of development for a while. He said I should do it and ask for a corner office with windows facing two directions and a big couch. That way, he said, when those engineers come in, they will know right away who is the boss. Okay, so what was the immediate cause of Lucid shutting down? Um,
Well, loans basically.
Loans, yeah, essentially. Bob was not good at negotiating contracts. The people found him uncouth and obnoxious. Um,
Un- Uncouth and obnoxious.
uncouth.
That's not a description you want to hear attached to your
Yeah,
name.
yeah. Uh, Had contracts that wasn't good he wasn't good at managing contracts. In 1983, he got an ARPA contract to modify a C++ compiler and loader to be able to load C++ code into Lucid Common Lisp, so that basically FFI. So you could use a subclass from C++ within Common Lisp. The contract was predicted on cost sharing. Apple would pay us 250 grand, and they would put up 250 grand worth of additional labor. Bob told the developers to charge to ARPA anything that even vaguely could be considered work for them. We were in the process of trying to get our loader to work for Sun, and so that work was charged to ARPA. Damn! This seems like an
Terrible.
illegal thing.
Terrible.
When he had gone through all the ARPA's money, the ARPA project was shut down. We did not deliver on time and didn't plan to. We were lucky ARPA decided they wanted to did the work done rather than see us in jail or make us pay for one of our competitors to finish the work. Yeah, both possibilities. Yeah, that was not good at all.
Bob not only killed the Lisp market, but also salted the field.
Bob told me and
Yeah,
others on many occasions during the last years that it didn't matter what the Lisp market did because within a year, either our product would make us rich or else we'd be out of business. He felt that this justified eating up the Lisp market and our own position. Yeah, that's the problem when you have someone that is only there for the money, because he didn't care about how the company would succeed at all. Actually, he didn't care. Um, yeah, then there's a Back to the Future reference. Uh, Bob had accumulated 4.5 million in debt against something like 4 million to 5 million per year in revenue. Yeah, so this is not sustainable. The board did not want to keep Lucid afloat by paying back the loans, and that's why Lucid folded when it did. But Bob is not the only culprit. The Bill guy is also um, part of the has some blame. So then they would have to make a distribute a Japanese version of the Energize IDE in Japan. The development would cost 1 million with around 700,000 upfront. Damn, that's a lot of money, man. Only 5 people. Damn.
yeah.
Yeah, but the INS president didn't meet Bob. He met Bill. And and
Actually, he came to visit on Bob's last day,
exactly.
apparently.
But Bob was not there. So Bill needed the remaining 300,000 from INS to support a reasonable plan for long-term survival, or at least 150 to survive until September. Of course, INS knew what was going on because the INS engineers were around and they knew that a layoff was imminent. One of the INS developers met with the president and Bill and Warren. The conversation went like this. The INS president said that he would pay the 300,000 if he knew that the project would be completed on time, and that because he had been an engineer, he knew that the project would not be completed on time unless the very people on it remained on it until completion. Yeah, so again, insight from being an engineer. Insight. Bill looked at
And
him in
then
the eye and said, I give you my word today that no Lucid engineer on the project will be laid off.
he lied. He just lied.
2 or 3 days later, the 3 Lucid people were gone. Warren didn't like these particular engineers, and one can only speculate on what the motives were and why things were done the way they were. But INS did not pay, and that was the last straw. To some American businessmen, one's word means nothing when money is involved. Besides, one's word only signals intention at the moment. It is not a promise like a contract carefully reviewed by lawyers and signed in front of witnesses. Yeah, this is the problem. So, word not having any weight. Um, yeah, so somebody writing about lucid folding and Lucid's downfall. Well, yeah. Again, this is like, uh, yeah. Objective comparisons show that this is not to be true. That evolution as a species survives when it has numbers, not when it is the best. Well, this explains why C survived, right? This is the entire
Yeah,
argument of the virus model.
yeah,
It's not about being better. It's about having numbers. Um,
which is kind of sad.
yeah, no, yeah, it is kind of sad actually. Uh, yeah, so basically management being the main culprit of the entire folding process. They had the engineering power, but management screwed up.
And then Bob went to England.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so the lessons we're gonna read in the next chapter. The day after Bob quit, he and his wife moved to England. Blah blah blah. So this is the same Victoria from before. Although I have to admit bias because of my hatred of him and what he did to my company, I cannot place all the blame on Bob's fault. More blame, I think, must be ascribed to the American business system and the business education system. Bob learned to run a business as an abstraction. He wasn't able to understand the market. Well, this is kind of misleading because Bob learned to run a business as a black, unopenable abstraction.
Black. Yeah,
He wasn't able to understand the market and we're trying to penetrate. He didn't want to understand the customer's needs except only insofar. So Bob is essentially the 1980s version of the 2025 person just saying, ChatGPT, give me this. And then it spits out, you try to run it, doesn't work. And instead of understanding what's wrong, you just say it again. And you
yeah,
keep doing this cycle until something happens on the screen.
yeah.
He didn't want to understand the customer's needs except only insofar as it was necessary to make them pay. He didn't care about the company's employees. What he seemed to care about was his position of getting credit for success and the bottom line. There is nothing wrong with caring about the bottom line, but there is everything wrong with being obsessed with it. These traits were learned at school and in his earlier business career. Bob always said that blame was for children and dogs. That's so fucked
There,
up.
that's terrible. Yeah.
Fucked up. And then he had a daughter in 1987, divorced in 1993, lived out of the trunk of his car for the first year of his separation. The world sometimes has a long memory, and you stick out of the crowd a little. It's hard to predict how it will affect you. Uh, yes, now he's talking about his new job. Mm,
Yeah, apparently someone related to
bad faith.
Lucid was in there.
Yeah, bad faith. Because he's saying, I had a bad influence on Lucy, and I was at least a partial cause of its failure from having being too technical and too much opposite to management. Yeah, this is just fucked up.
Yeah, no, that's just wrong.
Yeah. If she or he is lucky, a developer will work for a company that carries an emotional hold. I cared more about building a company that people would want to work for than a company that would make people rich. I think I built a place where I liked to work and I was hurt to see it fold. I think also I built a place, possibly by accident, where some of its employees liked to work. In January 1991, when we had our first layoff, only one of the people who had to go sent this message, which is essentially like being grateful for the opportunity. And that's how we
And
close
that's
the chapter.
and that's how we close the chapter. Yeah, just tragedy, basically.
Tragedy, man. Okay, this is the last chapter of this book, right? Money through innovation reconsidered.
Yep.
So just to confirm before I finish the recording, yeah. So we just went through this, and then through this, and now we the next and final session will be these two, right?
Yep.
That's a lot of pages. That's 20-ish pages. I hope we can manage to do it in a session. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording now.
All right.